Hey Melanistas, I've got another video for you, just one day after my last one, because I just got stuff on my mind. By the way, if you don't want to be a Melanista, you can always be a malcontent. That's fine. I kind of feel like the school marmy look I kind of get with these glasses is actually like I'm like a sexy librarian, you know? I've got a lot of books over there too, so I could actually be a librarian. Downside is my lighting. I've never tried to set it up before for having glasses and not having a reflection, and it's late and I'm tired and it's not going to get any better than this. So you're just going to have to deal with it, okay? So, I just got off of doing a voice lesson with my sister, and I feel like I'm doing pretty good here right now. And I want to sort of just try and keep it going and just yammer on some more. And I also saw some stuff today that kind of pissed me off. And at the same time, I was thinking about some stuff I've been dealing with lately. So a couple of things happened lately. One of them is that I joined a Discord server that appears to be like trans heaven. It's actually not like for a trans thing. It's actually a Discord server for a YouTuber named Mr. Atheist, who is not anti-theist. He is just atheist himself, which I think is really important. Like he's not out there like proselytizing against religion. In fact, he's actually has a lot of religious friends who he brings on his channel sometimes and talks to them in a very non-confrontational way about religious topics. He's a great guy. I really like his opinions and whatnot. But for whatever reason, his server is like trans central. And I've really got to meet a large swath of trans people that I wouldn't have met otherwise. I don't think. Like I don't. I'm older now. Like I'm technically like ancient. I think, right? 42, which just basically means that my entire body is ossifying as we speak. Right? That's what happens. I think. Actually, kind of is what happens. Never mind. It's not funny, is it? I'm turning into stone. It's terrible. My tangents have tangents. I'm sure you've realized that by now. It's just the way it is. It's the way I communicate. Probably should cut them out, but I kind of feel like it's a core part of my personality that my tangents have tangents. In fact, in my book that just came out today, which obligatory plug for my book that just came out today, How Wearing Leggings Changed My Life. Look at these leggings. Actually, these are some of the leggings that actually had a really critical role in changing my life, because the very first time I presented in amongst my peers, my professional peers, as like a super queer looking dude, I was wearing these leggings and heels, ankle boots, while doing a presentation, like a professional presentation that they paid me to come and do. So yeah, these sort of have a special place in my life, and they're just like Reebok. They're like $35, but they're so shiny. Sorry, segue inside of an aside, inside of a side note, inside of another segue. What the hell am I here for? So it's that I don't really, in my line of work, I meet more older people. Most authors that are doing well as authors are a little bit older, because it honestly, I feel like it kind of takes a little bit of life experience to be able to tell a good story and have that story have some depth. And all right, I'm like playing like ping pong with the light in my glasses here. At the same time, I also want to look at the screen, so it looks like I'm addressing you, because the bear's not going to do all the work. Okay, the bear's got other stuff to do. She, even though she's lined up with a microphone, she's not giving this presentation. I got my ears pierced today. It's kind of exciting. By meeting all these kids who are trans, and like, like in my mind, like most of the time I engage with parents whose kids are trans, but I'm actually getting to meet and talk with a lot of kids that are trans. And most of the ones I'm talking to, they're all over 13. I think the youngest one is around there is 14, and there's a couple others that are in their mid 20s, and a lot of them are 17. It's like all of them are 17 for some reason. But it's really interesting to see their experience, because I sort of figured like, well, I came out and everything was hunky dory, right? It's fine. It's 2019. Like, you can be trans all you want. It's a cakewalk, right? I mean, obviously, I didn't believe that specifically. I know a lot of my experience has to do with my social standing, and the fact that I've surrounded myself with a really great peer group, like authors are in general. I mean, half the authors I know are like writing like about people like having sex with werewolves. I mean, they're already writing about trans shit. Like I'm kind of normal. I'm just change my presentation from male to female. They're talking about people that like they want to bang cows and shit like that. Okay, I don't think anyone's writing cow porn. Someone's probably writing cow porn. But just to say that my experience is different, and someone actually told me that, and they actually called it, said I have a bit of a privileged transition, and that kind of stung, and I kind of recoiled at the suggestion a little bit, but it's kind of true. Now, if I had transitioned at 17 back in 1993, I would not have had a privileged transition. It would have been very much like a lot of these. Actually, it's kind of really sad. It would have been very much like a lot of what these kids are going through. Well, except that I wouldn't have had a community I could reach out to that says, "Hey, it's cool, you're legit." I just would have had people giving me shit, and that would have been it. They still have all the people giving them shit, but they've also still got the community that they can reach out to, and it's something. It's it's kind of hard. Like you think, like, okay, like, if your parents don't. I mean, I think everybody who's had to like have major "I can't talk to you anymore" problems with their parents probably kind of knows this, in that even though like, okay, my parents were toxic, I have to remove them from my life, it's actually really hard to do, because even if you push them out, you still feel like, I wish I didn't have shitty parents. I wish I had good parents, like my friend over here. He has great parents. Why can't I have great parents? So, so the support system is really important, and even though you can have a non-familial support system, it's not the same as having a familial support system, because these are the people that you thought were supposed to love you unconditionally, and as it turns out, they're going to kick you out of the house when they learn who you are, and that's kind of terrible. So yeah, so I've learned a lot about people who have had far less privileged transitions than I have, who can't present it all the way they want to do, or they can present just the way they want, but they just have to sort of lie about it, and everybody in their family sort of pretends it's not really happening like that. I'm gonna move the microphone closer because I don't want to hunch. Hunching is bad. It makes you look like a crone. And apparently, I'm like 8 years away from being a crone if I was a witch. I'm supposed to endorse my crondom. I don't know about that. I mean, I guess I could do it, but not really a witch. I feel like I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. That's appropriating motherhood versus appropriating femininity. It's a different blog entirely. And the other thing that I'm actually going to make a longer video about this, because I'm researching it before I make it. But I was actually also called a transphobe this week, and a bootlicker as well. I mean, I'm down for licking a pair of boots. They just got to be on the right foot, you know. And my boots are always available. Actually, it's kind of gross, to be honest. Boots are on the floor. Like, no, you don't lick boots. Gross. I've never been into. I mean, I shouldn't kink shame. I'm not going to kink shame, but I don't like dirt. I like clean things. Boots aren't clean. Well, I mean, the tops of your boots are clean. This is like such a tangent. I shouldn't even publish this video. This is like just me, just like stream of conscious nonsense. Exactly. That's exactly what's happening right now. Anyway, I'm going to title this video, "Don't Watch This Video. It's just a weird stream of conscious." Oh my God, it's terrible. Anyway. So I got called a transphobe, I got called a bootlicker, and it was because I didn't endorse violence as a primary reaction to people who think differently than you. And it's based on this poster, and I've seen this sort of thing so many times that I sort of I knew what it meant as soon as I spotted it. It was something along the lines like, there are some girls with penises and some boys with vaginas, and there's some transphobes who still have teeth. And the idea is not that you think that they're rednecks and they're going to lose their teeth. It's that someone needs to go kick their face and cause them to lose their teeth. Curb stomp them, punch them in the face, knock their teeth out. People exhibit the same sort of sentiment towards Nazis all the time. And I don't want to talk about Nazis because that's like a charged topic that people use to get an emotional response. And it's a logical fallacy where if you can invoke Nazism, then you can sort of like use an emotional response to trump any logic, which is why I basically say that anytime you invoke Nazism, unless you're actually specifically discussing Nazism, you automatically lose the argument, because you're just trying to create an emotional response to the other person and trump them with like this emotional sledgehammer, so that you don't actually have to talk about the actual topic anymore. There's lots and lots of other analogies that people can make in arguments other than bringing up Nazis. Like I said, unless you're specifically discussing Nazis, which we're not. We're talking about transphobes who might also be Nazis, but there's lots of transphobes who aren't Nazis. I mean, J.K. Rowling is now a transphobe, apparently, because she doesn't believe that trans people are real. I know. I don't like the phobe part, because it makes people think phobia. And they're like, well, I'm an arachnophobe because they terrify me and I run away. But trans people, they don't terrify me and run away. Okay, some of them do terrify me. Maybe they see me and I'm like in my 8-inch heels and I terrify them as I come lumbering down the street. But it's a weird name. And I know some people especially who are unfamiliar with a lot of the terminology, balk at that. They're like, well, I don't necessarily agree with trans people, but I'm not a phobe. Which is just, yes, our language is clumsy. I'm sorry. And what do you want me to do about it? I can't fix our language. I can barely like fix my hair, you know? Our language is already screwed. We'll just have to deal with it. Don't try and make sense out of the thing. It's not gonna get you anywhere. Yeah, so I got called a transphobe because I didn't agree with that statement. I'm like, I don't really endorse violence. And I've actually, over the years, I used to be like young and angry and like, let's go to war and kill the people that are bad because otherwise they'll kill us, you know. And while I don't like completely disagree with that under the right circumstances, I really actually kind of believe in nonviolence now. I just, every time you look around, you see that violence always makes for more violence. And that every time you have like a violent action, you might like quell the people or something like that, but you don't create any sort of long-term solution. And if you look at all of the major things that have happened societally in the last 200 years, like the biggest one being women getting rights and the right to vote, the suffragette movement was non-violent. I mean, sure, there might have been violent bits here and there, but overall, it was not a movement characterized by violence. It was characterized by women and a lot of men who agreed that the women should have rights and supported their actions. Because if every single man out there said no, women should never have rights, then it wouldn't have worked. Because it's just, it would have been men versus women, and if it became violent, then the women would have lost. However, what women said is that we're just never going to cook for you or do dishes, and you ain't getting no more sandwiches ever. And then it all worked. Okay, it was a lot freaking harder than that. There's some amazing things that happened. I love reading about some of the women and what they did. Like the first time that women got to go for lunch in New York without a man present. They didn't have a male escort. And they had to do it like in a separate room where no one could see them and stuff like that. Like, it's just like, holy shit. Or like how like 1970 was the first time women could get credit cards on their own, without it like to be, and then they could become that was the first time they could really become financially separate. Not the first time specifically, but it was a big step in women becoming financially separate from men. But all of that stuff was nonviolent. You didn't hear about like, women were like, the only good banker is a dead banker, or, what's the problem? Some bankers still have teeth, stuff like that. They were just like, we're people and we have rights and we should be able to do these things. And eventually people ran out of arguments, that anyone would believe after a while. Right. And that's sort of what's happened. It happened with black people. Everyone's like, oh well, once you have like interracial marriages or you let black people in the same schools as us, it's just all going to be terrible because only people with white skin can learn things from people from white. I don't know what the logic actually was. To be honest, most of the arguments that you hear for trans issues now just sort of change up the reasoning a little bit to instead of talking about penises and vaginas, talk about like the kind of sex that gay people would have, or AIDS. Just like basically give these are the reasons why it's bad, and you can take all the exact same arguments, just sort of like change a couple of key things, and they become the exact same arguments that were used against gay and lesbian people especially back in the 80s when I was much younger. And you take all those exact same arguments, and those are the exact same arguments that were used as racist arguments before. And it's always the same thing. It's like it's like purity and the nuclear family and yada yada yada. It's the same arguments get trotted out all the time. And I really kind of feel like, to a certain extent, that the reason why trans has become such a battleground is because we're like sort of like the last big thing that has to be overcome, as far as like sort of like humans getting to behave the way that humans really are, sort of thing. Like, okay, we finally got to agree that people who had different colors of skin were all human, because that actually had to happen. People didn't used to believe in that. They used to believe that we were separate, like, species, pretty much. And we had to tell them, like, okay, look, phenology is the one where like they had like the whole thing about skull shape, and they tried to assign like all sorts of traits to skull shape, and it all turned out to be completely wrong. That we got rid of that one. Phrenology is what that was. And then we finally got to agree that, like, we're all about as smart, and we might have different like characteristics that are maybe tied to race, but it's more just to do with like intermingling of breeding for a really long time caused certain genetic traits to happen. And then we said, okay, well, it looks like, I guess, apparently people who aren't, hetero can actually love each other. And they seem to be pulling it off. And now we've got like decades of evidence now. And now it's down to trans, and non-binary too. I mean, many non-binary people are trans, and many non-binary people are not trans. And I'm not saying that I think they are or they're not. I'm saying they identify or don't identify as trans. I feel like non-binary is one of those ones where you can kind of talk about how people identify, because it's not like something that you can fit into an existing definition everybody uses. But this is, like I said, I'm going to totally title this thing "Don't Listen to Me. I'm Just Rambling." So this kind of goes back. So I believe in nonviolence because nonviolence worked to solve some of these problems. You look at Gandhi. Gandhi was very nonviolent, and he caused a massive revolution to happen. You could also look at things like Canada and Australia, left the British Empire totally nonviolently. They did it over just rational people having conversations, and it was a nonviolent separation, and eventually they became countries, and then they were still dominions for a while, and then they became their own sovereign nations after a while. I mean, technically the Queen's still the titular leader of Canada and Australia, for example, but she has, she's never, her representative is Lieutenant Governor, and he's never, the Governor General, Lieutenant Governors for the provinces, the Governor General is the Queen's representative in overall Canada, and he's never vetoed anything ever. He's never exercised his powers other than just rubber stamp every bill that comes out. And those were non-violent separations that happened. There were a lot of non-violent things that have worked really well. In fact, I was reading up on it. There's just pages and pages. There are some that ended terribly. But there are also some that started good things too. The Bosnian War, which began through non-violent protests against Slobodan Milosevic, and eventually it turned into a war, but it wouldn't have actually escalated without the initial non-violent protests. When they got rid of Gaddafi in Libya, until things went to shit later on, the initial protests and everything were all non-violent. Egypt changed their leadership through a non-violent revolution. Now you might say that you might not like who came in either of those situations. That's immaterial. The point is that non-violent change works. And the majority of the major change we've had in the last couple of centuries has been non-violent. I gave my initial example of the women's rights movement, but many cases, like Martin Luther King was a non-violent revolutionary. And yes, when people say, well, he didn't condemn the Black Panthers and whatnot, and then I believe there's a number of reasons for that, but he himself was still non-violent, and he advocated for people to look for non-violent means first. And even Gandhi, who is the king of non-violence, he said that should a scenario occur where his options are cowardice or non-violence, he will pick violence. Cowardice or violence, he would pick violence. So he's not saying you never fight and you let them beat you when you're down. What he was saying is that you should always pursue non-violent means until the bitter end. But you should never become a coward. He said nonviolence is not cowardice. Those are different things. Running away from protecting your family is not a nonviolent option. It's a cowardice option, and he did not endorse doing that. I don't endorse cowardice either, but I don't endorse a violent response as the first response. Because the thing that got me labeled as a transphobe and that I had to push back on, and eventually, I pushed back on the thing, and then I got called transphobe as a result of pushing back on it. But say for example, you find a transphobe and you punch him in the face, because that's what you do to transphobes, and apparently that's what you do to me, because I'm a transphobe, so I need to be punched in the face because I'm not properly supporting trans people by punching other transphobes in the face, which already sounds a hell of a lot like a cycle of violence, doesn't it? But let's say you find said transphobe, this detestable person that we can now other and treat them as subhuman and assault them without any of as a society we've all agreed upon that we shouldn't go whacking people in the face with fists and or sticks for just because we think differently. You have to do a bad thing before you get punished, not think a bad thing. And I subscribe to words have to be exceptionally bad before they are actually violent. And it could have to do with the size of your platform or your reach. It could have to do with the amount of what you're trying to incite. But you can't just say bad things about a transphobe and say that is violence on the same scale as physical violence. Let's say that. I also don't. Violence in many cases is in the eye of the beholder. When it comes to non-physical violence, verbal violence in many cases is the eye of the beholder, because you can see some people engage in conversations that sound terribly violent, and then they just laugh afterwards, and you're like, how the hell do they even do that? I don't understand. I know the people who become very agitated at things that are far less strongly worded, and they feel like it's a violent act upon them. So it's a very tricky and muddy thing. So I can't say that all verbal statements of transphobia are violent, because ironically, then, if all transphobia is violent, and my call to not be violent is transphobia, how is that violent? And I guess the argument might be that I'm supporting other violent people, but I'm not. I'm actually saying they should be nonviolent too. I'm saying everybody should stop being violent. So how is that violence? But if you think about like sort of like a logical flow of events that would happen after you find said transphobe and you punch them in the face for being a transphobe and knock out their teeth, like what happens next? Does that person suddenly say, "Oh yeah, I really wasn't considering this idea on its merits. You've totally won me over with your logical presentation of facts, and you're presenting yourself as a person that I can feel empathetic and compassionate towards. Yes, this has completely changed my mind." No, they sue you and put you in jail, and now you're the bad guy, and now all of us trans people look like the bad guys because you run around punching people in the face. That's not me. That's not what I do. I don't stand for that. I don't support it, and I never will, ever. If someone is committing acts of violence, then yes, that sort of thing can happen. But if they just have say and think things you don't like, you don't get to be violent with them. I'm sorry, you just don't. That's not how our civilization works. Because if you think that you can do it for one thing, like you've got your own internal justification for what's an allowable offense, verbal. I'm really getting I'm getting all twitchy in this cheek here. It's this one. It's getting like all. You got turns. So it's in the lights. You can't see the anger line that's forming in there. The foam will soon cover it up. Don't worry, it'll be fine. It's you basically say, well, you can't run around punching people in the face except for in the cases that I think it's okay. But other people can then now use the same logic for things they think okay, because they're like, well, the only good trans person is a trans person with no teeth, and they punch you in the face, and like, well, where's that going to get anything? It's not, because you're not going to change anyone's minds by doing that. If you want to commit genocide and wipe them out, then yes, that is effective. Then you will no longer have any violence after you kill everybody who disagrees with you. So those are your options. Try and pursue nonviolent means to reconcile differences, or kill all the people that disagree with you. That is such a false dichotomy. But this is the only two solutions that work in my mind. There's no middle ground here that really works. So when some people say to me, like, in that thread, I guess someone said, like, the middle of the road is only has yellow lines and dead armadillos. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, but the solution version of this, where you have no more transphobes, where you didn't convince them of anything, involves you killing them. Because that's otherwise, either punching them in the face doesn't make them change their minds. They're still transphobes. So you didn't do anything other than just get yourself sued and thrown in jail. The only solution in that direction is to murder them all. And then they're not there anymore, and then you're fine, right? Because you killed the people that disagreed with you, and eventually it'll just be you. And then it'll be fine, because no one's going to be mean to you anymore. You'll be very lonely, but no one will be mean to you. So hooray. And the other side is to actually try and have some compassion and understanding and build bridges. And that's what we've done so much this last century. We've said, hey, look, black people are people, and they have all the same hopes and dreams in life that we do as white people. And it was good. And we've said about other people who have different colors of skin. We're like, shit, it's just colors of skin. We're all just people. And I've traveled the world a bit, not a lot. And everywhere I go in the world, what I discover is that people kind of all just want the same thing. They want to try and live an enjoyable life and not have to worry too much about the future, and to be left alone when they want to be left alone, and to hang out with other people when they want to hang out with other people, not have other people telling them what to do too much. And that's really it. That's all we want. It's all the same thing. And we learned that with gays and homosexuals. We're like, look at that. They just want to be in love with people, And then with trans people, we just want to use the bathroom. That's really the number one right that we want, is to be able to use, and not to be fired for being trans, That's and not and I mean, I don't want more rights than anyone else. I just want the same rights as anyone else. The right to be able to use a public restroom and not like fear for my life, which I don't actively do. And to be honest, some of that is because of a privileged transition, and some of that is because I spent most of my life wearing the cultural armor of a 6 foot tall white male. I didn't have to worry about things like that. So there are probably scenarios where I should be worried, and I'm not. And I'm trying to be a little more conscious of when I'm possibly in danger than I used to be, because there used to be lots of scenarios where I wouldn't have been in danger, and now I am, and I have to be cognizant of that. Otherwise, I'm going to find myself at the wrong end of a pointy stick. And I guess the last thing that sort of occurred to me recently is I've had some people lay down the argument of, well, there's just really not that many of you out there, so why should we accommodate you in any way? And I've mentioned this before, that there are a lot of us, but I was thinking about it, that there are probably about 2% of the population is binary trans like me. So people who want to transition all the way to male or transition all the way to female. So if you go to like a high school, like my high school is about 1,500 to 2,000 people. If it was full, it was very rarely ever full, but it could actually house about 2,400, I think. But at a high school of 2,000 people, there are 40 binary trans people in that school, like people who are male to female trans or female to male trans. There's 40 of them in that school, and there's probably twice as many non-binary people of some sort. So there are like at least 80 gender non-conforming people in that school who are on the spectrum, and that's not counting gays and lesbians, and bi people and pan and poly and all that. So you want to talk about people that are like not really aligning with the prior norms that we thought that everybody aligned with. It's probably like a good 200 or 300 people at that school out of 2,000. They're in this other group that have had to hide historically and are still hiding. Because if you think about, like, you go to like John Q High School, do you think that do you see 20 people who are completely out of the closet trans? No, you probably don't, because most of them are still in the closet. And if you have like a city of 20,000 people, there are 400 binary trans people in that city. People like me who are fully trans. Do you see 400 people worth of binary trans people wandering around your city? No, you don't, because they're in the closet, because they still can't come out. So when you think about and all partially they can't come out because they can't go to the bathroom anywhere. Do you really think like some trans woman who doesn't pass very well and is wearing a dress is going to go in the men's bathroom? No, of course she's not, because she doesn't want to get the crap kicked out of her. And she doesn't want to use the women's bathroom either, because she's afraid someone's going to say, is this a man in here? That happened to me once. I was in a bathroom and I was talking with a friend who was in there with me. Another one came in and we were talking. She's like, is a man in this bathroom? And I'm like, no. So it's kind of awkward when you're being called out for being in the can. So anyway, this is where my rambling thoughts have taken me today. That I don't even think I touched on J.K. Rowling being a TERF now, but that sucks. Let's be nonviolent. Let's try and be as nonviolent as we can. There are a lot of us trans people, and I know it feels like we're trying to make a lot of shit about us, but we're just kind of trying to let you guys know we're here, and we do face some problems, and we really would just, wouldn't mind if everybody just thought that we were okay and didn't try and say that we didn't exist. That would be swell. And that's really about it. That's all I got today. So again, random stream of conscious video, crazy thoughts and all sorts of things. Don't listen to it. It's bad. My voice has been really good this video, so I feel like that's a total win. So I'm going to put it up anyway because of that. So Melanistas, malcontents, please subscribe. I'm over 100 people now, so that means I get like my own custom channel. So it's youtube.com/c/Mallory Cooper. Wah, wah, wah. That's my channel URL now. But subscribe and click the little bell thing and ring it so it's always on. Bling, 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 bling. And then you'll get my notices that I've got new stuff up, except for this video, because you don't want to watch it because it's just me rambling. And then like and comment. That stuff really, really helps. It really helps a lot. So if you can do that, that'd be fantastic. I probably won't record anything before Christmas, because I'm going to be like balls to the wall, which has nothing to do with testicles. Balls to the wall actually has to do with the throttle on an airplane, on a fighter jet. So we're all in fighter jets flying towards Christmas, balls to the wall. And I'll probably record something after Christmas. Actually, Susan and I are recording some fashion videos on the 27th. I think we're doing jeans and scarves. Scarves is what we're doing. So that will be on the Susan Mal fashion channel that I have as well. So that's probably the next video I'll be doing. It'll be fun. And until then, I will see you guys later. Maybe I'll do a short one with like some of my I'm gonna get some good loot, I bet. So I might do a video with some of my loot that I get for Christmas. So that'll be fun too. I'll see you guys around. Ciao.